Hello everyone and welcome back to Whisky Wednesday, and I'm here again with a really cool haul from some auctions. There were meant to be 3 bottles, unfortunately one of them got broken. If I can import the image I will put it here. Rest in peace, that bottle of Abbott's Choice, which I never got to try but smelt rather nice. But here next to me, the biggest bottle we have is this. This is a 1967 bottling of Canadian Club. The label is absolutely destroyed. Before I broke the seal on this, it was already very tattered and very damaged. And then, how do we know it's from 1967? Nice and simple, although even the lots on Scotch Whisky Auctions didn't actually mention it was from that year, so that's quite interesting. It has no ABV shown at all anywhere on it. I found a picture of what it should look like, and again, I'll put that here. It says bottled in bond on the bottom of it. It means a totally different thing in America than it does in Canada. This is bottled at 40% ABV. It was distilled roughly 1961. Probably the oldest thing in whiskey terms that I will ever own in terms of older vintages. This cost me £25. With shipping and stuff, that would have taken it to about 37. But still, I think for £37, this is really fun. We will try that in a minute. And then the other one is really fun as well. It's a very, very famous bottling of Clynelish, and it is the Clynelish bottled by Ainslie and Heilbron, which the full-size bottle of this goes for quite a lot of money on auction. How much I am unsure. A lot. Certainly compared to the £25 again that I paid for this. Fun things on this in terms of its labelling. Obviously it says Clynelish on it. 100% malt whiskey, 40% ABV or 70 proof. We're still in the old imperial thing. Funny thing was, and again if I can put a picture in of this I will, the label when I bought this actually had the colours on it. The dark one should be red and the light one should be yellow. But when it arrived, the colour had faded, but I think that just adds something to it. Typically when I finish miniature bottles, I'll send miniatures out to like friends and fans and things with it. But I think I'm going to keep that one just because it's so fun. But I've always wanted to try this bottle of Clynelish. But first we're going to try Canadian Club. Rye whiskey. Genuinely made from rye and some other grains too. I just thought this was really fun, and you can actually find this exact bottle with its perfect labelling and the tax stamp I think Master Malt had one for about £225. I'm going to tell you straight away, this is not a £225 bottle of whiskey. It just about makes it to be, including shipping, a £37 bottle of whiskey. But it's just a really fun bit of history. Pick these up on auction, and if the labels are absolutely ruined, even better. But in terms of spending over £200 on them, unless you're a Canadian Club historian, I would not recommend it. Stunning nose on the thing. It just smells of caramel. Sweet caramel and grains and kind of light toffee stuff. Generally unsure on the colour. I would assume it probably isn't natural colour, just being in the era that it's from, but it does have a particularly nice viscosity to it. If we can get this to kind of zoom in and focus. It's quite an oily thing for something that's been sat at 40% alcohol for a long time. Other important point too, this is a screw top. And when I opened it, when it arrived in work, the white plastic seal, which should be underneath this, the kind of little cap, was simply sat on the bottle. So the glue for that had failed over time. Luckily it hasn't impacted the flavour, and if it has, the alcohol probably would have kind of washed it out anyway. But yeah, it's pretty viscous for 40%. Unsure about the colouring. It smells a lot like a light, fruity, appley kind of bourbon. There's even some like darker stuff, like kind of almost like a milk chocolatey note to it. But it's not the most complex thing in the world. In all honesty, we reviewed Canadian Club about 2 years ago, just the modern bottling. It doesn't smell that different. But this is obviously a cooler version. Still using these Copetas with the lids on them, just because it is still peak summertime. This is the first time I've seen the sun in about a week, and there are fruit flies everywhere in my house, despite all the traps that are around. Again, there's like a little bit of that fruit on the nose, I get on the palate, sorry. There's almost like a cognac-y feel to it. Kind of marinated fruit, there's like a bit of raisin, there's a bit of an apple thing. It's clean, it's light. For something which is so old and such low alcohol, it has a nice finish, like medium length, bordering into possibly long. I finished drinking that about 30 seconds ago now, and I can still taste it, that nice gentle heat. When Mad Men first came out, I was a kind of a die-hard lover of that show. Didn't like how it ended, but bar means, if you haven't watched Mad Men, please do. It is a socially and historically important TV show for many different reasons. This stuff's featured in it, and I think it is actually the style of bottle. I'm gonna have to go back and have a look. And I think on the side of it here, you can kind of see, it's not hazardous or anything, but there is almost like, not mold as such, but there's some sort of water damage that's kind of hit the side of this label. You know, things have been ripped off it and stuff. But this is really cool, it's open, it sits on my drinks cabinet. So if you want to come in and, you know, your first whiskey of the night can be a 1967 Canadian club when you come around. Pretty fun way to do that. Gonna move that to one side, have a little bit of water. And we're gonna jump into this Clynelish. Now, I've not reviewed Clynelish for a very long time. We could probably do a re-review of the 14-year-old. I don't particularly like doing re-reviews because we've already done it. Loads of other people have done it. And at that point we're just doing like batch analysis, which I don't find that interesting. But with this particular bottle of Clynelish, it's been one of those things where me and a couple of friends in the past have nearly gone all out to buy a full-size bottle of it. The actual 75 and 70 cl versions. This was bottled by Gordon Macphail. In fact, it does say it just on the bottom, if that will focus. Just under the 40% ABV part. Gordon Macphail, bottled by in Elgin. And, you know, Clynelish, it's just one of those things. Once you get into single malt whiskies, it's kind of impossible to not try Clynelish and Springbank and now Ben Romack and Ardnamurchan and Arran. Just these distilleries which they're coastal, they have like a little bit of everything going on with them, they tend to be delicious. But Clynelish is becoming very, 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 very hard to get in a standard bottling form. Certainly in the UK, 14 is very sporadic in terms of its availability. And independent bottlers are selling quite a lot of casks of Clynelish back to Diageo. Diageo have redone the Clynelish Visitor Centre. Brewer is obviously reopened. I think they're distilling now, or in the process of starting to distill now, or redistill at Brewer. So obviously that is going to be a massive tourist attraction north of Inverness in the upper, you know, northeastern Highlands. You know, if you're on your way to Old Pulteney, you've kind of got to drive through there. So it makes sense to make it more of a tourist attraction, vis-a-vis buying casks back at a profit. So independent bottlers are making money on the casks they bought years ago. But I was recently in a shop and they had a 27-year-old Dalmore independent bottling, a 30-year-old Glenturret independent bottling, and a 27-year-old Clynelish. So yeah, 25-year-old Dalmore, my mistake, 29-year-old Dalmore, 30-year-old Glenturret, and a 27-year-old Clynelish. And the 27-year-old Clynelish was significantly more expensive. Same cask type, similar ABV, like they're all about 55-56%. And yeah, like the Clynelish cask just cost the independent bottler more. The independent bottler was Hunter Lang, so therefore on the shelf it just cost more money. But you're not going to find that much Clynelish in indie bottlings anymore, unfortunately. So, resorting to auctions and buying these fun little things, there is a tiny bit of sediment rolling around at the bottom of this. It is not separated fats and things. This is also a screw top, but that plastic white thing is still within there. It has got a fair bit of damage to it. That's the first time I've actually ever smelt that. The Canadian Club's been open for about a week, but I'm just going to dive into this now. Again with this, unsure on colouring, 40% alcohol, so we should just assume it's chill filtered and natural colour. But with this, I'm looking for references to what modern day Clynelish is, because once you try it, you never forget. And just trying to see if there's any of those older styles in there. Something I haven't stated, which is probably quite important for all of you intrinsic fiends that are watching in terms of dates, is when this was actually bottled. I am trying, if I know, there'll be an annotation on screen somewhere but I genuinely have no idea when this was bottled. I've emailed Gordon Macphail to ask them, and even the bottling code on the back, it says 1501 in this kind of like engraved glass. I don't know if that's of any reference to anything. 01 possibly being like the first quarter of the year. The 15, it is not from 1915. It's not from 2015. So that can mean all kinds of things. But nonetheless, if I know, it will say it here somewhere. But to smell and to taste. Loads of lemon. Quite a lot of lemon, quite a lot of honey. I will say it noses boozier than 40%, and it comes across significantly stronger than the Canadian Club does. There's still that fizz of alcohol to it. There's a grapey quality to this. It reminds me almost of like white grapes, or walking past like or through a vineyard. Sorry, there's something on the inside of that glass. That whole waxy Clynelish thing, it's there, but it's not particularly dominant. But there is certainly an element of like citrus skin and lemon skin, and in terms of the viscosity on this thing, again, it is damn oily. It does coat that glass pretty well for something that's, I assume, has been sat in a small glass bottle for probably about 40 years. I would assume this is a 70s bottling. There's some nice sour fruit things to it. I've already mentioned grape, but there's almost like a gooseberry thing to it. Like sour green apple. It's like tangy, fruity, sweet and sour. You almost get no barrel influence. And I mean, when you smell vanilla and honey and coconut, typically that's coming from bourbon barrels. But with this, I'm not getting any cask influence at all. There's no element of sherry input. Obviously, it's probably from a bourbon cask. A selection of bourbon casks. Possibly some sherry, possibly some port. But at the minute, I've just got no leading influence of what that barrel type would be. At the minute, it is all just, not spirit, in a sense of very young whiskey, but quality of like house style distillate, like what you expect a Clynelish to be like. That's the shining motif of this. There's loads of lemon oil. It's so citrusy and warm, and then slightly sour. Getting no touches of peat, no elements of like soft smoke or anything. First time trying this. Let's see what happens. Whoa. Oof. I tell you what, it might not smell of any particular barrel, but my God, you pick up some barrel spice on that. Wow. Another thing why other world whiskies that aren't single malt are so different to how single malt delivers flavour. You'll notice the first couple of seconds of me chewing this, it's like, it's fruity, it's lemony, it's nice. And then slowly out of nowhere, this kind of spiciness came up. The Canadian Club is the first whiskey I've had today. This is the second, but the first malt whiskey. You'd think that was like, if you gave me that blind, I would tell you that is something at least 46% from some sort of refill hogshead. But it's so spicy and vibrant and alive after having been kept in this little thing for however many decades. The taste is very continuous from the nose. We're getting loads of lemon, there's that sour green apple thing, grape. The barrel spice is beautiful. It's like, how would you describe it? almost, not chilly, because that gives you the wrong kind of heat that I'm trying to influence, but it's like a surge, like this wave just kind of starts at the tip of your tongue, pulls through all of your palate, you swallow the whiskey, and then there's like a nice little backdrift of it just pushing up through the front. I can still taste it now. That's pretty damn good. That is pretty damn good. It's already stained the glass. It's probably not going to pick this up. There's already like a slight staining. So maybe it wasn't chill filtered. Conversation for another day. I'm sure someone in the comments may know. Big thing as well. Something I've totally missed. 12 years old. Just on the top there. For some reason I thought they said white horse because there's a horse on the top of it. It's just a trademark symbol. Yeah, it's a 12-year-old whiskey. See, now it's just beeswax and more honey. And a slight kind of chili thing, almost like a chili flake. It's becoming a bit drier. Really fun. Like I say, there should have been 3 reviews. Sadly, I dropped the other miniature, and my colleagues have never seen a sadder looking person. It literally just fell to the floor and smashed, and my face just dropped. But what I'm saying is, the last Scotch whisky auction to finish was interesting for many reasons. One being the biggest selling bottle on that auction was a Macallan 60 Red Collection, which sold for just over £200,000. First time it's ever done that. It's only sold for about 122 in most places. Still a crazy amount of money, but that was quite shocking just to watch that. It went from, when I was bidding on these, it was at 172, then went to 184, then 200, then 202, and I believe it finished on £204,000 for the bottle. That reads slightly suspicious to me, but we won't delve any more into that. But if you go to the last page of these auctions, and indeed the most important part is that you can have them shipped to you. If you find things that are really cool, you can add them to a watch list, bid on them on the last day so you don't have to make any big financial commitments. If people outbid you, they outbid you. Set a limit, do not go over it. The fact I could find this for such low money was, in my view, like an absolute miracle, because these have sold for about £120, £140 for a miniature before. And then with this, I hadn't really wanted to buy an old bottle of Canadian Club, but I saw the label, and there's always warnings on these kind of lots about, the seal might not be fully intact and we don't know how strong it is, and there's no evidence of any sort of stickers on it regarding tax or anything. And I'm like, that's fine. Because if it's bad and, the 20 quid turns out to be a bit of a loss, then it's only 20 quid. It's not, 200 or 400, or when you're buying these really old vintage bottles at a couple of thousand, sometimes tens of thousands of pounds. But these are really cool. I'm not going to say I'll buy stuff off auctions every month, because obviously we've got other financial commitments. But, this is the second video of this, and I think it's just really cool to talk to you guys about these bottles. If any of these bottles you were vaguely interested in and you were going to pull the plug on retail at, £200, you still might want to, you might not want to now, that's your decision. But I had someone message me, I think he was called Whisky Flu. In fact, let me check this because my phone is just here. And he was like, I was bidding on the same bottle that you bought because I put the Canadian Club on the Whisky Wednesday Instagram page. And... oh, sorry, it wasn't Whisky Flu. We were chatting about something else. It is a person called Noteworthy Whiskey. So if you are watching this, thank you very much. It was nice to kind of chat with you and do all this stuff. You're based out of Calgary in Canada. I see a bottle of Glengarry 12 as your newest post. I just like that. Very nice. But yeah, so we were chatting and he was like, I was going to buy that. It's amazing that you bought it too. So you never know who's looking. Don't get into a bidding war. Like I say, set your limit and stay there. If I were to score these, like, the Canadian Club's not particularly impressive. It's just a very nice drink. It's a non-thinker nice drink. I'd probably give it like a 6.5, something like that. I will enjoy drinking it, but it is not a complex or rare whiskey. The Clynelish, on the other hand, is very interesting. If that was available currently in a full-size bottle at a not stupid price of maybe like, and it's not cash strength, so let's be optimistic and say 60 quid, which I know is unlikely. I'd give it like a solid 8, maybe even an 8.5. But realistically, that full-size bottle is going to cost you a couple of hundred, if not a couple of thousand, or 1,000 and a bit pounds per bottle. Based on that, based on the miniature I've got, I'm still going to give it a pretty decent score of like an 8, because that is one of the nicest Clynelish I've ever tried. But yes, thank you all for watching. This was auction video number 2, and I'll see you all next week. Cheers.